Hello, in this video I will show you how to use a line chart in Chart.JS in Blazor. So using Chart.JS library with Blazor in Blazor and creating a line chart. Now I do have videos on basic bar chart and basic bar chart with multiple columns. You can take a look at those videos, check them out if that's what you need. If you need lines, this is the video for you. So let's take a look. We have a sort of couple of lines, right? In two sort of dimensions, you could say, I guess, intersecting with each other, right? And if you click the button, it generates that. That's the whole idea of the example. It's just a simple example, right? But we do have two lines, okay? If I go on the first value on the first pair, it will say val1, right? It will say val1, and this one is line 1. I go on the bottom one, it says line 2, but still val1, okay? And then we have, again, val2, but this is line 2. And this is line 1, okay? And this is then val3. So to the right, we have val1, val2. This is an array. And as for basically two of these dots in one value, that will be not an array. That will be in another array, which you will see. Okay, so we have one main array for these labels, main labels, you could say. And then for each value of a pair, each name of value of a pair, a label as well it is, we have another name, sets of names, right? This is what we have. And then we have the y-axis, right, with numbers. So it goes from 0 to 7 in this case, but obviously whatever name or other value you provide, that would work perfectly. Okay, so now we are in the Visual Studio and we need to start with the basic JavaScript, okay? Now, you don't have to do it in the index.html, okay? This is in the index.html, you don't have to do it here. But if you don't do it, you do another file, for example, you will need to reference the script in index.html, right? That's all you need to do, really. And other than that, we need a simple label. We need to establish a function rather, not label, okay? I'm talking nonsense. A function. So we have generate bars. That's great. That's a function. Now, this is a function actually from a previous example. I just took this. It doesn't really matter what you call it, right? This was generate bars, and you can actually compare this to my other videos that I mentioned previously. But basically, we have data to display, which is an array of arrays, okay? An array of arrays, which will come from C#. And with labels to display is a simple string array. After that, you need to construct this CTX, right? Or I'll reference it because we get element by ID. So this canvas is already created. Now there are some intricate parts with the canvas so you can actually be responsible. It doesn't basically just fill out the whole screen. It fits somewhere at least, right? So we get element by ID, and I'll show you later what it looks like. But once you have the canvas, you can create new chart. We do new chart, but we don't assign it anywhere, because what happens is the chart is actually created into this CTX, okay, into this already existing canvas. And since it is already displayed, we don't need to assign it somewhere or add it as a child somewhere. It's already displayed. We don't need to re-display it. So we just construct it and we don't take any reference to it, right? Now, another very important thing, if you want a line chart, you do type line. You can find this stuff in the documentation as well, but what you can't really find in the documentation is the data and how it's sort of constructed. Now, each type of chart will be very similar, but there will be that key difference that will either make it work or not work. That will either make you happy or probably extremely unhappy. So we have data, right? And in the data we have labels. Okay, so remember, labels, that's the x-axis, you might call it, or the row of labels, right? Not for each dot, but for the whole row. Labels to display, which is a string array. Okay, a string array, an array of strings. And then we have data sets. So data sets is where we put the data. That is where we put the data. Now, you can have one of them. You can have one of them. You can have 2 or 3 or 4 more, right? But this is the second label. So remember, you saw line 1 and line 2. Now, the line 2 will be below, and that's another set. Okay, and then we have data. So again, I said this was array of arrays, array of arrays. So this is the second array, and this is the first array, right? And obviously these should match. Okay, these should match. I don't mean that the value should match, but I do mean that the length of the array should match. If you have 5 on one, you should have 5 on the other one, right? But that's quite obvious, as that's how really all the charts should work, at least from what I know. Obviously, there are some unorthodox use cases, but usually that's how it goes. Now, the background color, okay? The background color. You can have it as one color, or you can have it as an array, as we have in border colors. So basically, for each value, it would be different background color, and it would be different border color, as it is different border color. But if you don't have an array, it will be one color, okay? One single color. If you do have an array, then for each value, it will be basically represented with a different color. Now, you can do it, you don't have to do it, it really doesn't matter too much, but I would suggest, I'm not a designer by any means, but I would suggest leaving this opacity thing, okay? If you put it as sort of solid colors, it doesn't usually look that well, but again, I'm not a designer, just a little piece of advice. Okay, this is what we have. Basically, if I make it smaller, right, we also have options. And as for the options, this goes pretty much by default. Everything goes by default, right? But we have responsive set to true, and this is quite important, okay? This is quite important. Now, you can actually find this piece of code as well as any other code of mine as it goes with tutorials on YouTube, on Patreon. And you'll also get some great deals on my courses, such as my Stripe course in Blazor, my Blazor course itself, my API development course, my C# course, all these different courses. You can buy them and you can get some great deals, some courses for free on Patreon. So in the index.razor, it's all quite straightforward, right? I need to go to the left. Okay, and now, this is responsive. Now, if you want to make it responsive, you need to wrap your canvas. Let's see if I can zoom in a bit more. You need to wrap your canvas in this div with class chart container. So with this class, okay, you wrap your canvas, and the canvas doesn't have anything. The size of a canvas basically gets determined by the div. It's quite an intricate arrangement. Once you actually see it in the developer tools, if you're interested in that, it's sort of interesting. It doesn't always work also, but if you said 20 the H and 30 the W, right, it should work quite decent. Now, it's not exactly a square, right? It's not exactly a square. 20 by 20, you'd think it's a square, but it's not. It's just not. It's not pixels, right? So do be careful about that as well if you're using such measurements. But you actually do have to use these measurements, otherwise the responsiveness doesn't really work all that well. It is a bit tricky. You will have to play around with it. You will probably have to get a proper designer to actually deal with these alignments. But at least you can run it in Blazor, and at least you can make it work to some extent, right? You can actually use it with this knowledge. Now, other than that, in this case on click, we have invoke void async. So we invoke generate vars function, which creates the whole arrangement. And in that we provide double, okay, new double, double, double. That's the array of arrays, right? Array of arrays. And we have a couple of arrays provided of double. And as I mentioned before, we have simply one simple single array of strings for these labels. So this is how you do it. This is how you create a line chart. Do take a look at my other videos about bar charts. It might be useful as well just to have that knowledge in your head. Also, do check out my Blazor course, also my Stripe integration course. Knowing how to integrate Stripe and Blazor is really useful, I believe. It will come in handy at some point, I believe, in your life, and it's better to get started with that early on. Also, support this channel on Patreon and subscribe to this channel for more such videos.